So, what would actually happen if Iran went to war with the US and Israel? It's a huge question, right? Well, today, we're going to break down a pretty fascinating strategic theory from the YouTube channel that tries to answer exactly that. Let's dive right in.
And right off the bat, the source hits you with this. The war is no longer far away. Talk about setting the stage. This really frames the whole analysis around the idea that this isn't just some far-off possibility, but something they see as an imminent threat.
So, okay, that raises the big question, right? If this is coming, what is Iran's plan? I mean, how would they even theoretically take on some of the world's most powerful militaries?
And look, just to be super clear here, our goal isn't to say if this theory is right or wrong. Not at all. We're just here to unpack the logic of the argument itself. You know, the how and the why behind this specific vision of Iran's strategy.
Okay, let's get into the nuts and bolts. The entire foundation of the source's argument, and I mean the entire thing, rests on one key element: Iran's missile capabilities. According to this analysis, they are the absolute central pillar of the whole strategy.
So the source breaks down Iran's arsenal by range and target. You've got your shorter-range missiles like the Fateh and Zolfaghar, which they say are for targeting those regional U.S. bases. Then, for the longer-range stuff, strikes against the Gulf for Israel, it points to systems like the Shahab 3 and Gadir. And then there's this one they really call out, the Kibar Shakan. They label it as a hypersonic threat aimed at Israel, which basically means it's designed to travel at these extreme speeds, making it incredibly difficult to intercept.
And the source is really clear on this point. These aren't just weapons for a parade. The analysis argues that their alleged performance in other conflicts has already proven them to be a credible, effective, and, well, a really difficult to counter threat.
So here's the crucial point. It's not just about having the missiles, right? It's about how you use them. And the source argues Iran's entire doctrine is built around a concept you might have heard of: asymmetric warfare.
So what does that even mean? Well, the goal here, as the video presents it, isn't to win a traditional head-to-head battle. Nope. It's to make the war so incredibly expensive and just draining for the more powerful opponent that they're eventually forced to quit. It's not about winning on the battlefield, it's a strategy of pure exhaustion.
And this is where it gets really interesting. Check out the economic imbalance here. This is the heart of the strategy. The source claims Iran can launch swarms of drones that cost, relatively little, forcing the US to use these interceptor missiles that cost exponentially more. The logic is, you don't have to destroy every single American asset, you just have to make your opponent go broke trying to shoot down your cheap drones.
And this just brilliantly illustrates the sheer scale the source is talking about. It puts the estimated size of Iran's arsenal somewhere between 8 and 10,000 missiles and drones. In a strategy like this, that massive quantity becomes a quality all its own. It's designed to overwhelm even the most advanced defense systems just through sheer numbers.
Now, the analysis doesn't just leave this as a theory. It points to a real-world example to back it all up. It claims that in the conflict in Yemen, the U.S. found itself in this exact situation, using multi-million-dollar missiles to shoot down low-cost drones. It was an economic death spiral that, according to the source, just became completely unsustainable.
Okay, so let's move to the endgame and see how all this builds. All of these pieces, the missiles, the sheer numbers, the crazy cost imbalance are designed, according to the source, to achieve one single objective: drag the United States into a long, protracted war.
And the analysis presents this quote as a core principle, a central truth to their whole argument: great powers do not fight long wars. The theory is that a superpower's greatest vulnerability isn't its military might, but its political will. Its patience for a long, drawn-out, and really costly conflict.
And what's the primary historical parallel they use to justify this? Afghanistan. The argument they make is that the U.S. wasn't defeated militarily, not in a conventional sense. Instead, it was ultimately worn down over 2 decades by a persistent asymmetric insurgency, which eventually led to a withdrawal.
From there, the source paints this really grim picture of the catastrophic consequences of a long war like this. It predicts the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, which is a critical artery for global oil. That would trigger a massive price surge, potentially devastating the world economy and causing crippling inflation and social instability right back home in the United States. And there's another layer to this theory, a geopolitical one. The source argues that other major powers, think Russia and China, would have a vested interest in seeing the U.S. get bogged down. It claims they would provide support to Iran just to keep the conflict going, and it draws a direct parallel to the alleged foreign support that the Taliban received in Afghanistan.
Okay, so all of this builds to what the source describes as the single most critical moment of the entire conflict. The one event that basically determines everything that comes after.
So after laying out this whole complex strategy of a long, grinding war of attrition, the analysis suddenly pivots. It says that the ultimate outcome might actually be decided in the very first hours of the conflict. So what gives?
Well, the logic they present is simple and pretty stark. Step 1, the U.S. launches its initial attack. Step 2, the entire war, everything that follows, comes down to one single question. Did that first strike successfully eliminate Iran's senior leadership?
And here it is, the source's dramatic conclusion. It claims that if the leadership survives that first blow, it is an absolute guarantee that the conflict transitions into that long asymmetric war we've been talking about. A war that, according to this theory, Iran is positioned to win, and its opponents are positioned to lose.
Ultimately, the analysis presents a very specific, and you could say a very bold theory of victory. But it leaves us all with a really powerful final question. Is this a plausible winning strategy? Or is it just a blueprint for a conflict so devastating that no one could ever truly claim to have won? Something to think about.